I realized that we need to flip the switch in the evening as we prepare to go to bed. And the only thing we should be thinking are thoughts that are conducive with preparing ourselves for restful, restorative sleep.
If you're not conscious about your investment strategy, you won't end up where you want to be, not financially or as a human. On this show, we interview highly successful investors and share how they overcame limitations to become unstoppable forces of success. If you're ready to learn what it is to be a conscious investor so you can end up where you want, keep listening.
Great to be back with you, Conscious Investor. Today, I am joined by Hal Elrod, and I am absolutely confident that you are going to gain so many gems from this entire podcast episode. From start to finish, you don't want to miss a moment because we're going to be talking about so many important elements that are going to empower your life. You know, because we need to hit refresh. And recently, Hal has relaunched his book, The Miracle Morning, his anchor book. And we're going to dive into what does that look like. But in addition to talking about what the book looks like as a refresh, updated version of it, we're also going to be talking about what does that mean for your life? What does it look like to hit refresh on your life? What does it look like as the economy is going sideways? How does it look like? What does it look like for you to hit refresh so that you can thrive regardless and have a strong and powerful mindset? Before I invite Hal to come on, I just want to thank you. If you are new and this is your first time listening to The Conscious Investor, thanks for stopping by. I love new listeners and I'm just happy that you are here. And it's, you know what, just go ahead, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode, because I promise you it's going to be worth your while. Best Mondays are going to be Monday Mindset episodes. And on Thursdays, we always have a guest that is going to speak powerfully into your life. And hey, if you're a longtime listener, you know you are just gold. You are a treasure in my heart. And I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the texts, the emails, the reviews, everything that you do just to, you know, pour into the Conscious Investor movement. Well, ready to get started? Let's go. Hal, welcome to the Conscious Investor.
Julie, it's great to see you again. We've met in person a few months back, and thanks for inviting me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, you know, when we met, and I made this fully, you knew this the moment we met, I kind of went up to you with a little chip on my shoulder. I don't know if you remember this. And I was like, Hal, really? Miracle Morning for busy professionals who are traveling? Really? Yeah. How do we fit all that in? And that was when I think I moved from being a fan to actually being a ambassador, crusader, and cheerleader for Hal Elrod and what you are creating in the world for people. Because how you navigated that question was like, oh my gosh, you're human. You're not superhuman. And it meant the world to me. And actually, I know we can start at a lot of different places and we should talk about your backstory, but can we just go there for just a brief moment and say, like, some people will say, Miracle Morning, I don't have time for that. I'm on a flight and I just was networking till, 2 a.m. and there's no way I can get up. Like,
yeah.
What's that? How do busy professionals handle that?
So the Miracle Morning was based on a quote from Jim Rohn. That's what gave me the idea. And by the way, not a book idea, but an idea for my own personal ritual. And Jim Rohn said, your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development. And when I heard that, and then he went on to say, by the way, so your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development, because success is something you attract by the person you become. And when I heard that, I quantified it in my head. It was 2008. The economy had crashed. I had crashed. My house was being foreclosed on. I was diving deeper and deeper into debt every month, living on credit cards. And when I heard that, I asked myself, what level of success do I want in every area of my life? And on a scale of 1 to 10, I think it's fair for all of us. Like, I want a 10, right? Like, I've never met anyone that's like, well, I don't want to be too successful or too happy or too healthy. Like, I'll settle for like a 7. No, I think there's an innate drive and desire within all of us to fulfill our potential and create the best life we possibly can. So I decided, and I would imagine you can all agree, we all wanted level 10 success in our lives. But then I asked myself, well, if Jim Rohn is right, and your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development, well, I have to ask myself, what level is my personal development on a scale of 1 to 10? If I want level 10 success, where's my daily personal development at? And at that time in my life, it was a 2 or a 3. Like, I read a little bit here and there, but like, I didn't have a level 10 personal development ritual that ensured I became that level 10 version of myself to create the success that I wanted. And so I got online and I just Googled, like, what do the world's most successful people do for their personal development? And I was looking for one or two practices. I ended up with a list of 6 practices. And I went, well, which one of these is the best? It was meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, journaling. I can't do all of these, right? To your point, like, I'm busy. I don't have enough time in the day to do what I already do, right? Like, I end every day going, I didn't get the whole thing. I got a lot more on the to-do list done. So I felt like, and this really is very much a mindset, a scarcity mindset around time. I don't have time to add anything into my life. I could maybe fit one of these practices, but not all 6. And then thank God I had an epiphany and I went, wait a minute. What if I did all of them? What if I woke up tomorrow 30 minutes earlier and I did the 6 most timeless, proven personal development practices in the history of humanity that the world's most successful people have sworn by for centuries? And I got excited and I woke up the next morning and I think I actually woke up an hour earlier and I did 10 minutes of each of the practices. I wasn't a morning person, but there's this philosophy from my friend, my mentor, Kevin Bracey. It's so simple, but he said, if you want your life to be different, you have to be willing to do something different first. And waking up an hour earlier was so out of my comfort zone, but I'm like, I'm going to give it a shot. Here's the crazy part is that, Julie, it wasn't hard. I thought it would be hard, but as soon as I committed to it, I was like a kid on Christmas Eve. I couldn't wait to go to bed. I couldn't wait to wake up. And when the alarm went off, I didn't even have the desire to hit the snooze button. I was like, I'm going to, run out in the living room and I'm going to do these practices. And I went through all 6. And at the end of that hour, my life changed because my income was the same that day. My income didn't change that day. My bank account balance didn't change that day. Right. But my mindset completely transformed. And I went, if I start every day like this, with this much energy and clarity and motivation and gaining new knowledge that I can apply to my business as it's, tanking, if you will, in 2008, it's only a matter of time before I become the person I need to be to turn my life around. And it happened so fast in less than 2 months that it felt like a miracle. And I called it my miracle morning. And I shared it with my coaching clients who resisted. And then they decided to give it a shot. And 13 out of 14 clients said, oh my gosh, Hal, this miracle morning thing is like a miracle. It's changing my life. I had the best week in my sales career, on and on and on. And so for anyone that thinks they're too busy, join the club is the first response, right? But then the second response is that the miracle morning is totally customizable. You don't have to do all of the savers every day. You can pick and choose what works for you. You can customize your routine, and it can be anywhere from 6 minutes. Literally, there's a chapter in the new book called the 6-Minute Miracle Morning that teaches you how to do the 6 savers literally in 1 minute each, but it's not, you don't rush through them. You sit there and you pray or meditate for a minute and you get centered and you calm your nervous system. Then you pull out your affirmations and you read what you're committed to that day and why you're committed to it and what you're going to do to ensure you follow through. Then you visualize yourself doing the most important thing you need to do that day. Then you do a minute of jumping jacks and get your heart rate up. Then you pull out a book that you're reading, you read a page, you learn one thing to apply to your life. Then you pull out your journal and you write down what you're grateful for and you feel it for 30 seconds. 6 minutes, as little as 6 minutes, is totally life-changing and transformative. And this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it back over to you. Because when you start your day in a peak physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state, which is what the Miracle Morning enables you to do, you're able to show up at your best for yourself, for those you love, and those you lead. And every area of your life reflects how you show up every single day.
And this right there, this is why I'm like, okay, I'm such a literal person. And conscious investor, you might feel the same way when you've heard about the miracle morning and such. It might feel like, oh, it's so rigid and I just can't. And it's like, okay, one, that's one of the 4-letter words. Go back to that podcast episode. Can't is one of the worst 4-letter words. I'd rather hear some other 4-letter words than that word, because that's just so, but this, being able to adapt it, being able to apply it into our lives, because you're right. I mean, like, preach. And I will say from my own experience, I love waking up and I'm so excited to dive into What am I going to find in my Bible? What am I going to find in the book that I'm reading in addition? What am I going to find about myself in my journaling? Like, the discoveries are unending when we're willing to commit to the practice. And it is fun. It's a treasure hunt every single day.
Totally. I agree.
So, you came out with the updated version, right? The not so obvious secret to transforming your life before 8 a.m., the updated and expanded version.
Yeah.
What led to that? Because we've had years now between first publication and now, and you have another book, which I have to admit, Hal, it's my favorite, The Miracle Equation. My absolute favorite. And I want to touch on that, but let's go into the updated version first and just what led to the updated version?
Yeah, the Miracle Equation was my follow-up to the Miracle Morning. But so the Miracle Morning Updated and Expanded Edition, it officially publishes on 12/12/2023. It's available for pre-order right now with a bunch of cool bonuses. And the reason I wrote it, there's two reasons. One is, if you go back and you read your old work from 11 years ago, it's embarrassing, right? You're like, oh my gosh, this was terrible. How could oh my gosh, like hopefully we're all growing and evolving. And so who you were 11 years ago is not who you are now. And so I've always, when I read the book, of course, we're our harshest critic. And yes, millions of people have read the book, love the book. But for me, I'm like, always wanted to redo it. I've always wanted to update it. I've always wanted to make it better. So that's one opportunity that I got this time around, is I literally got to go page by page and correct every sentence, make every sentence better, without changing too much, keeping the core, the bones there. But so that was one piece, is just making the book, the writing better. But the other piece was, when I wrote the Miracle Morning, I was relatively new to all of the 6 practices of the Miracle Morning, which, by the way, if someone's not familiar with these 6 practices, they are organized in a memorable acronym, SAVERS, known as the Life Savers. The acronym is SAVERS, S for silence, that's your prayer or meditation, A for affirmations, V for visualization, E for exercise, R for reading, and S for scribing or journaling, right? So those are the 6 practices. And I was new to most of them when I wrote the book. So now I've been doing the Miracle Morning for 15 years, 11 years since the book published, but 15 years of me practicing it. And by the way, I do it on average, 6 to 7 days a week. To this day, I've done almost 5,000 Miracle Mornings. And so I would hope that I've learned a heck of a lot more about meditation and affirmations and these practices. So I always wanted to give, hey, yes, here's the basics if you're brand new, but here's the advanced techniques that you can apply. So the new edition has 70 more pages than the original. So it has 70 pages of brand new content, including 25 pages just in the Savers section. So there's 25 pages of new advanced techniques, holding your hand through the Savers, so on and so forth. And then there's 2 brand new chapters at the end of the new Miracle Morning book. One is the Miracle Evening. It's your strategy for blissful bedtime and better sleep. Because when I speak now, I always ask, by a show of hands, how many of you struggle with sleep? And it's usually half the audience, if not more, especially with how much anxiety and stress collectively as a society we're experiencing ever since 2020, right? The world has become a really challenging place to live. And so I struggled with insomnia for 6 months, and I cured it. And so I have a chapter on how you can fall asleep feeling peaceful, blissful, grateful, etc. And then there's a chapter called The Miracle Life, which is your path to inner freedom. And it's really how to optimize your mental and emotional state so that you can actually be at peace in the midst of challenges in your life. I share my cancer journey and how I maintained my mental health during that, so on and so forth. So yeah, so the all of that is to say this is truly an updated and expanded edition, where I really wanted to write it so that if somebody's brand new to the Miracle Morning, they're gonna get the magic that was in the original book. But if somebody's read the original book even twice or 3 times, which a lot of people have, right, they're going to feel like, wow, this is exceeding my expectations. So it's for all audiences, if you will.
I absolutely love that. I have to circle back to what you're saying about, hey, after a period of time, we should see a difference. We should see a change in ourselves, right? And I always think, if I'm not a little bit embarrassed by myself from 6 months ago, I have failed myself. I want to look back and be like, Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I love permission to just say, I want to look back and say, well, I can do that better now. I've grown, I've transformed, I've been on this journey. And that's what, I mean, that's the power and the essence of, I believe, a life well lived is let's not be static, let's be dynamic, so
Yeah.
that we can be whole and complete. I also love that concept of closing out the day.
Yeah.
Conscious Investor, there's a podcast episode on this, probably 100 episodes back on. It's important. We have our miracle morning, but then closing out the day. I'd
Yeah.
love to learn more about that. Can you give us a sneak peek before, 'cause books on pre-order right now. So can you
Yeah.
give us a sneak peek at some of those practices as to how do we have those bookends on our day, close out our day well?
And I will just say this, that when you pre-order the book, you get 40 pages, a 40-page sneak peek of the new book. And that includes the first 5 pages of a 20-page Miracle Evening chapter. So you can't actually start that, but I'll dive into it right now. The Miracle Evening. So it's just the idea that most people go to bed at night and they're very often they're thinking about things that are out of their control, right? And the thing is, when you're in bed, there's not much that's in your control, right? You're not taking any other action other than going to sleep. At least that's what we should be doing. Yet, and here's the problem, is when we think of things that are out of our control, we feel out of control. And when we feel out of control, that creates stress. It creates anxiety. It can lead to depression. I really realized that in 2020 when that which is out of our control was just amplified, right? And that's like watching the news. That's why watching the news causes people stress because we're watching things that for the most part are out of our control. And the news is designed to, create fear responses. So you keep coming back, right? What else do I need to know about? What else do I need to be afraid of, right? It's kind of addictive. But anyway, so the idea is I realized that we need to flip the switch in the evening as we prepare to go to bed. And the only thing we should be thinking are thoughts that are conducive with preparing ourselves for restful, restorative sleep. And again, I call it blissful bedtime, right? It's the Miracle Evening is a ritual that it is designed to prepare your mind and your nervous system to calm down, to relax, to let go of any stressful thoughts and replace them with peaceful, calming, gratitude-inducing thoughts. And so I used to be stressed out before bed. And now I drift off to sleep just smiling, thinking of what I'm grateful for. And by the way, there's a heck of a lot of things I can be stressed about. But it's a discipline. And I talk about that in the chapter. Like, how do you gradually discipline yourself to where you're like, nope, I'm flipping the switch. I'm not allowed to think of these things because they don't serve me right now. The time to solve all of your problems and run through your to-do, right, is not when you're trying to sleep and it prevents you from sleeping. And so there's actually an acronym in the Miracle Evening chapter, similar to Savers, but it's called Slumbers, SLUMBERS. And it's different than Savers in that it's like a chronological, like Savers you can do in any order. Some people will exercise first, get their heart rate up, right? Or they'll read first, or in the Miracle Morning book, there's a chapter on customizing your Savers to fit your lifestyle and achieve your goals. You can make them work for you. They're very customizable. The Miracle Evening, these 7 steps, the Slumbers acronym, are very sequential. And I'll give you an example. The first one, the S in Slumbers, is stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed, because it takes 3 to 4 hours to fully digest your food so that your body is not working at night while you're supposed to be resting and rejuvenating. And I talk about like gradually, if you're used to eating right up until bedtime, stop eating 30 minutes before bed for a week and then go to an hour and then go. But very often, if you wake up in the morning and you feel like you were hit by a truck, right? You feel you're exhausted. It may be because you ate too close to bedtime and your body was working all night long. And so you feel exhausted when you wake up in the morning. And the last thing I want to share on this is one thing that I've found is that your first thought in the morning and your emotional state in the morning is almost always a mirror reflection of your last thought before bed and your emotional state before bed. And you can relate to that, right? Everybody can think about, you went to bed stressed, oh my God, tomorrow I've got to do this thing and I've got to, I'm so worried. And, you tossed and turned and you couldn't fall asleep. And then as soon as you wake up in the morning, your first thought is that thought, and your first state is that state. Now you're stressed. Oh God, it's here today. I have to do this. And that's part of the miracle morning in and of itself. Is the miracle morning is that you don't wake up to your problems. You wake up to your miracle morning. You wake up to your self-care. So that in and of itself, just having a miracle morning largely solves that problem. However, if you go to bed stressed, then you wake up stressed for your miracle morning and you don't get the most out of it. So I've realized that how you end the day is almost as important. I don't think it's as important, but I think it's almost as important as how you begin the day, because the two, are definitely correlated.
I a million percent. And this is funny because I felt so in stride with you when we met, a few months ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, same wavelength, vibrant, vibration, whatever you want to call it. It's like, yes. And it is like that. I mean, we go to bed and we wake up. I mean, we can relate to this. Two quick thoughts, and maybe not so quick. We dive into this for a moment. I want to give a shout out, and Conscious Investor, I want you to go check out this episode. It's episode 495 on Hal's podcast called Achieve Your Goals with Hal. Okay. So make sure you go check out Hal's, his podcast on whatever platform you're on. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as well. And this podcast episode is something that really it dovetails into everything we're describing right now. It spoke to me, Hal. I was like, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is my friend Hal. Thank you, Hal. This is exactly what I needed, because Conscious Investor.
Remind me which one that was. What was the episode title? Oh, you'll get there? Okay.
I promise you. This is a long buildup, isn't it?
Okay. All right. Go for it.
So Conscious Investor, you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, Hal, you make this sound so easy. And sure, I mean, guys, we haven't even touched on the major car crash that he experienced, the near-death experience with cancer that he miraculously overcame, and, read the Miracle Equation, listen to it. Also, just do both. But in this episode, it's called How to Overcome Feeling Overwhelmed in 3 Steps. And it's episode 495. And this episode is I'm pointing to this episode because sometimes we can see and we can hear people and say like, oh gosh, Hal, like, oh, good for you. That sounds so easy. I'm glad your life's so easy. And you're so transparent on your podcast, and you're so vulnerable and so honest to say, I get overwhelmed too, guys. I feel these things too. So I love that. And I just want to give a shout out to say, I really very much appreciate that you're not just putting out these amazing books and these, very practical acronyms that we can implement into our lives, but you're also doing your own wrestling with this. And this is why this book, the new updated version of the Miracle Morning is so important for everyone to go out and buy, because this is going to be that addition that you are going to need as well, Conscious Investor. So, if you don't mind, like, how is it, as we're talking about, just briefly, like, dealing with overwhelm, yes. Okay. All right, Hal, I'm going to adopt my Miracle Morning. I'm going to put, savers in the morning, slumbers in the evening. But I still feel a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What do we do about that?
So, I'll answer that in 2 ways. And the first is adopting the Miracle Morning in general, because again, if someone's feeling overwhelmed, and when I'm in an overwhelmed state, like, everything is a no for me, right? Because I'm like, I can't say yes to anything because I don't have enough time or space. And of course, the Miracle Morning, in and of itself, helps you to feel less overwhelmed, right? But if you're overwhelmed, how do you get yourself to do the Miracle Morning so you can feel less overwhelmed? And for me, it's starting with one of the savers. Like when I spoke at the event, that we met at, I always end my message by saying, commit to a 30-day Miracle Morning challenge, but just start by doing one of the savers and just wake up like 10 minutes earlier. So what a lot of people will do is they'll just do the R in savers, which is reading. If you've never read the book, right, you wake up 10 minutes earlier and you start reading the Miracle Morning book. And then when you get to the chapter after, 3, 4, 5 days, you do the chapter on silence, then you add silence in meditation or prayer into your next Miracle Morning. Now you got reading and silence. And then, the next day or 2, you read the chapter on affirmations, and then you add affirmations in. So it might be a week, 10 days, that all you're doing is waking up 10 minutes earlier, which anyone can do. And you're doing one thing for yourself that enhances your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. And then you're just building on it gradually, slowly. And within a week or so, now you're doing a full Miracle Morning. And maybe you're doing the 6-minute version. Maybe you're doing the 20-minute or 30-minute version, whatever works for you. So that's the first answer to the question, is like, how do you actually implement the Miracle Morning, which will help you with your overwhelm? The second piece, and this is one of the elements of the Miracle Morning, which is scribing, but you've got to get thoughts out of your head and on paper, right? And that's not rocket science, but it's so important, because if we don't, once we put it on paper, we can see it and we can organize it and we can feel like it's not consuming our inner world, which is what happens when you don't have everything on paper. And so for me, part of my scribing practice each day, I shouldn't say it's not every day, but when I'm feeling overwhelmed, is I will write down, is there anything, that's causing me stress that I need to be at peace with? And I write all of that out. And it's amazing, that magic that happens when you get it out of your head and your body and your emotions, and it's on paper. Now I can handle it. It's in front of me, not inside of me. And now I can go, okay, man, I have 17 things on my list. Holy crap. Like, okay, so for a second, you might feel a little like that is, now you're a little more overwhelmed for a second, but you go, okay, which of these need to get done today? And that's the second tip to overwhelm, is realize when you tell yourself, I have so much to do, if that's the narrative that you replay in your head, that narrative perpetuates feeling overwhelmed, and it is not true. You don't have so much to do. You have one thing to do, because you can only do one thing at a time. So there might be 17 things that you need to do eventually, but the cause of overwhelm is the lie we tell ourselves, which is, I have so much to do. No, you have to look at that list and go, okay, what am I going to do today? What can I do today? Then put it in your schedule. So you go, okay, I'm going to do these 3 things out of the 17 today, because I can't do any more. I'm going to do thing number 1 at 8:30 a.m. I'll spend 45 minutes on it. And then I've got a break after lunch for an hour. I'm going to do thing number 2, right? All of a sudden, the feeling of overwhelm, which is just a story we tell ourselves, now it's in writing, it's out of our head, it's clarified, and now we can organize it. And now we can look at one thing at a time, because the reality is you don't have so many things to do. You have one thing to do at a time. And what's that going to be now? And when are you going to do it?
Boom. Right there. I mean, I love that so much. And it's so powerful when we put it on paper, our imaginations and the mess. I always think of Pigpen. I'm not even a Peanuts fan necessarily, but I always think of Pigpen, and that's how our minds just turn into this big sloppy mess. And when we can just extract it, I'm going to mix metaphors, Harry Potter style, and just pull the thought out and put it on paper. It provides so much clarity. And when we have that clarity, it makes it far easier to say, this is the one thing that I need to focus on at this moment. And I love the fact that give it a time on the calendar. It's almost like people used to say, like, if you're going to get married, you have to have a ring and a date. Well, you know what? If you're going to move forward in life, if you're not putting the most important things on your calendar, they're not going to get done.
Yep.
They just won't.
My calendar is my to-do list for the most part. I just fill things in. I take it off my to-do list immediately once it goes to my to-do list, or I don't even go to the to-do list. I just put it in my calendar. And then if it doesn't get done for some reason, because the other thing before it took longer, now I have a thing in my calendar that I go, okay, I need to move that somewhere else. So my calendar, just like my digital calendar, like a bunch of puzzle pieces, right? And I'm going, okay, when am I going to get that done? Like tomorrow, I have 3 items on my to-do list, but they're actually in my calendar in order. I have 2 flights tomorrow. At 9:30 a.m., I've got to write my questions for my November 10th interview that I'm doing. At 10:15 a.m., and this is while I'm on a plane. So I've got my flight, and then I have in my calendar while I'm on the flight, I've got to finalize the VIP packages for the new book. Then on my next flight, I've got to schedule this email, right? So so my to-do list is actually in my calendar.
This is powerful. Conscious investor, you want to go back and check out a recent mindset episode I had on what is this story that your calendar tells. That is the most, our calendar reveals who we are. And if somebody looks at our calendar, what are they going to find? And this is why we even put our date time on the calendar and all of our family time. Everything should be on the calendar. If it's that important to you, it is on your calendar. I love that you move it around. I follow a similar practice where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how long is this going to take? What's this project take? What needs to get done? Otherwise, when is it going to get done? It needs
Totally.
a slot on the calendar. Hal, this has been just a treasure to have you, to share space with you, to create content for the conscious investor. And just, you have so much wisdom and insight. And I appreciate and value your dedication to, continual, I don't want to say improvement because it's just a life well lived. It's that zest for, I want to continue to transform, and I want to share that with the world and help others. And I appreciate your heart. And I just want to thank you. And conscious investor, we haven't even had time to dive into anything to do with the miracle equation. And so this is going to be my twofold challenge to you, conscious investor, is one, go pre-order the new updated version of the Miracle Morning. And I love the new cover. It's so pretty. It's yellow,
Yeah.
it's bright, it's happy.
Yeah. I feel the
cheerful,
same. Thank you.
happy. I just absolutely love it. So go pre-order that right now when you're done listening to this.
Well, and Julie, let
And
me
then,
mention for people the place to pre-order it. I just don't want that to miss. It's if you go to thenewmiraclemorning.com, there are awesome bonuses. So if you pre-order one copy, you get immediately the 40-page sneak peek of the book that has previews of the Miracle Evening and the Miracle Life chapter. You also get a 1-hour Miracle Morning Masterclass where I talked about things that didn't make it into the book. And one of them is sequencing your savers. How do you sequence the savers so that silence leads into affirmations, leads into visualization? And there's a through line through all of them that supports whatever your objective is at that time in your life or that day. And then you get 2 guided meditation tracks. One is the Miracle Evening guided meditation. One is the Miracle Life. So go to thenewmiraclemorning.com to pre-order, just because if you go to Amazon, you won't get the bonuses. And I want to make sure nobody misses out on those.
You don't want to miss out on the bonuses. Okay. So make sure you will drop a link in the show notes so that you can have access to all of those extra goodies. And you know what? Not every author does that. So, make sure you give a big shout out to Hal when you review the book and the material. And then make sure you go. And I'm going to say, conscious investor, sometimes I like the books and sometimes I like the audiobooks. I love the audio version of the Miracle Equation. Hal, you did a great job reading it. And it feels like you're listening to a friend, and the content is so powerful, right? Because we all need to have, if we want to do great things in our life, we have to have that unwavering faith, and we have to be willing to take the extraordinary effort. And so I just want to thank you for creating that as well. Hal, any other ways you want the conscious investor to connect with you and, dive into your content?
Yeah, I'd encourage everybody to go to miraclemorning.com and watch the Miracle Morning movie. So if you haven't seen it, there is a 90-minute full feature-length documentary called The Miracle Morning. And it features my journey, but it also features famous authors and influencers like Mel Robbins, Brendan Burchard, Muhammad Ali's daughter, Layla Ali, Brian Johnson, Robert Kiyosaki, Robin Sharma. There's all these amazing people that were in the film. And then halfway through filming, I was diagnosed with cancer, given a 20 to 30% chance of surviving. And I called our director to put the movie on hold. And he said, Hal, this is the movie. I want to come film you beating cancer, because it's going to inspire a lot of people that are going through, whether it's health challenges or some other. And once my wife approved it, I said, okay, that wasn't part of the plan, but it really made for a special, 30 minutes at the end of the movie. But you can watch the movie for free at miraclemorning.com. You can download the free app. There's an app that it's doing really well. It's got 4.9 out of 5 stars, almost 2,000 reviews on the App Store. It's really great. That's free. And then you can join the Miracle Morning community, which is a global community of people that are supporting each other in this. And all of that is at miraclemorning.com. That's a great hub.
Okay, conscious investor. Now you know exactly where to go, but don't waste time. Don't hesitate, because everything that you need is just right at your fingertips, right? And it's all about connecting with the right practices, connecting with people that are, going to share that journey with you. So make sure you head to miraclemorning.com and that you take the time, dive into all of Hal's content. Hal, I cannot thank you enough. I appreciate you. And thanks for joining us on The Conscious Investor.
Julie, you are such a light in the world. I appreciate you. Seriously, you radiate love and joy, and positive energy. And I'm better off having gotten to spend this hour with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Conscious investor, don't be a stranger. If we haven't spoken yet, why not? So go down to the show notes. If you want to talk about what coaching looks like, or if you want to talk about what investing looks like, my goal is to support you in taking your first or next step to a more empowered life so that you can live wholly and fully in your health, your mindset, and your wealth. Okay, so no being a stranger. Until next time, live big, love bigger, and do great things.